Hey guys, it's Friday. It's Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! I do that because that's my thing now, because this is getting stuck in people's heads, and it means it's catchy, and it means it's working, so I've continued it. And as I said on Twitter, if you want to make a video of yourself singing the Feedback Friday song and doing a silly dance, I may feature you in an upcoming video. Yes, incentives. I'm heading to, if you're wondering what I'm doing, the precursor site in game where you unlock some item of doom. I don't know what it is. I haven't used it yet. I haven't gotten all the music boxes. I want to just check in and plug my things in because I like the little music box sound, and it's something cool and different to show you guys. But what are we feedbacking today? Well, it was a crazy week, and there were a few perfect storm things that happened that put me right in the middle of it, and I admit I'm so tired of the outrage. It's boring at this point. The only thing you can really do is mock it, which of course is a coping mechanism, but it only creates more outrage because then people don't like that they're being mocked, which is a complete lack of accountability, but that's people for you, right? But one person did say something kind of interesting to me. They said, can you talk about dissonance in games from a lack of diversity in games? And I found what an interesting concept. And I've experienced this myself. I don't know, there's the music box. So soothing. So soothing. Yay. I could just listen to that all day. I love that sound. But, we talked about the fact that for this person and myself, a lack of diversity, and it's not just racial diversity, it's not stuff like that. It's if there's too much sameness in an environment in a game, it feels artificial. It's sort of an uncanny valley. It does create a certain amount of dissonance for certain players. And that's the thing about this concept of ludonarrative dissonance. It's pretty subjective. Something that can cause dissonance in one player won't bother, another player in the slightest. It's one of these concepts. This isn't an exact science, but it's fair to talk about because this person, like me, lives in a very multicultural city, and for people who don't live in a similar environment, you don't realize how normalized seeing different types of people becomes until you're not in that environment anymore. And this is very fancy looking. You notice how it teases you? It opens up little by little. It's like, what is it? I want inside. But it does have that impact for me. I can relate to feeling dissonance when there isn't enough. For me, it's body types. If everybody looks the same, it's not that I'm deliberately looking for it. It's just when you spend any time in a large group of people, and I do a lot of conventions, so I see a lot of this. There's a lot of different body types, and when you're in an environment that doesn't have that, it feels artificial because there's just this natural. How do I put this? There's a natural amount of difference that becomes normal when you look at it. Like it's not just fat people versus thin people. It's people of different heights and body types, meaning that the actual bone structure from person to person varies. And I think the reason I like the Ubisoft games so much is they actually capture the various people even in the crowd. So just naturally, they're not doing, not palette swaps, but people know what that means. They're not just using the same basic animation and putting a different coat of paint on it. They're actually using different bodies to populate these worlds. And in this generation of gaming, with games being as expensive as they are, and budgets being as ridiculous as they are, I think, you know, with all the stuff going on, there should be that sort of diversity. That personally matters more to me. And you notice I haven't mentioned anything about race or anything like that. It's not the only kind of diversity, though that is important to me. However, I understand that, I mean, you know, in Victorian London, they get as much diversity in as they can, but they're limited to, you know, what was there at the time. And I'm sure some people will say they could do more, but they made the effort to me, and that's what matters. But, you know, in terms of just people looking different, it does matter. And that is more important to me in terms of the realism of a game than whether a character's beard grows. I mean, that technology in The Witcher 3 was pretty cool, but how much did it really add? It kind of grossed me out because they made deliberate references to the lice that form in his beard, and so Geralt got a shave every time I possibly could, because ew, that's gross. But did it really add to my experience at all? No. Now for somebody else, you know, who's maybe more defined by facial hair than I am, maybe that matters. And that's why I said dissonance is a very subjective concept. And I think that it's an exciting concept and it's an interesting thing to talk about because it sounds so technical and it's this really interesting idea to explore, that some people think that there are objectively right or wrong answers when it comes to identifying and eliminating ludonarrative dissonance, and there isn't. People are too subjective. For people who don't know what it is, it's basically the feeling of being something being off to the point that it kind of kicks you out of the game at certain points. And obviously everybody has very different sensitivities when it comes to various things. For me, artificially restricted player choices or broken narrative branches kick me out of the game. It really throws me off. Clunky dialogue throws me off. For someone else, it might be that lack of people of color in a game, and there's no point in freaking out on someone because of that. That is just what, you know, distracts them for them. And I think it's important to talk about this stuff. I think it's important to get various perspectives on that, because we can only come at games as one person. We can only come at games as one player, and obviously, you know, we can only be one race, one gender identity at a time. And no, that doesn't mean a gender binary. That just means you are you, and that means you're not someone else. And that, I think, is important to acknowledge, because if we all become okay with it, you know, it's okay to like things or not like things, as long as you don't flip out if somebody doesn't feel the same way as you do. That's cool. You know, like, that's what makes games interesting. I love conversations with, you know, mature people who can say, you know, I like this part, I didn't like that. Oh, really? Why? You know, like, it's sort of this cool thing that you can have this conversation and see things from a different point of view. I mean, one of the conversations I'm still mulling over a lot is connected to Far Cry 3. I personally really, really enjoyed the fact that cultural appropriation is a theme in that, and they make a protagonist that's a white douchebag coming in and playing, you know, native, but he's not. Now, I love that, but I know other people who absolutely couldn't stand that, and they, you know, they aren't white, they come from a different culture, and I think that their opinion is just as valid as as mine is. Does that change my opinion that I liked what they did in Far Cry 3? No, it doesn't change that at all. But I respect their right to have a different view. And it wasn't so much agreeing or disagreeing or coming to a hard conclusion on the matter. It was the act of actually having the discussion that I think, you know, both parties walked away wiser for it. And that's what I think, you know, is one of the amazing things about interactive entertainment. Those dialogues are precious. You don't have to agree. They're just games. You know, at the end of the day, that's the amazing thing about it. You can disagree strongly about something, and nobody's actually getting hurt. They're just games. And I think that's important to keep in mind, because the reason we can have these dialogues and discuss these difficult issues is, you know, Jacob Fry is not a real person. I'm sure there'll be some fan fiction that, you know, fan fiction writers would beg to differ, but he's not a person. And so we can sort of examine his character and what he represents and what he does in game without really having to worry about his feelings. Now, that doesn't mean we can just go, he's symbol of patriarchy or whatever you want. No, because there are going to be some people who really like him and are really attached, and that's valid. But I mean, there's other things in this game, and this is going to be really, really juvenile. Okay, guys, I'm going to show you one of my favorite things about this game, and I admit it's really super immature if I can find it. This is one of the most glorious details I've ever seen in a video game, if you can bear with me through the fast travel screen. These are details I appreciate a lot. I'm sure other people will not give a crap, pardon the pun, when you see what it is. I went looking for this detail in-game, and it mattered to me that it was there. Like I said, I'm sure other people won't care at all with this little detail, but based on the time period and based on, you know, the Industrial Revolution, it was important to me. Now let's see if I can find it. Watch, it's all this lead up for nothing, and I'm just talking through a load screen because I had to get through it to show it to you guys. Leap of Faith are still beautiful. I still love those moments. There's just something so, like, sweet about that. Whoa, he killed him with his armpit. See, that's the kind of bug I like, because it doesn't actually break the game. It doesn't get in the way of me doing stuff at all, but it is a bug. So here we are, and there is, you know, leaves and puddles and little bits of garbage on the street. And that is so important to me. And horse manure, very exciting. Piles of horse manure, and it's subtle. I mean, some could say, no, that's just rocks. But that, why would there be rocks in the middle of a thoroughfare, you know, populated by carriages? That is horse manure. And I think that's super cool, because with that many horses, there's going to be horse poop. And could you imagine being the artist on this game that had to animate the piles of horse poop? Whoever did that should get a medal. That is, you know, glorious service to the gaming industry. They took one for the team. Good for them. And because someone bothered to put horse poop in a game, I have less dissonance in this game. And that just shows how absolutely subjective dissonance is.